So hey guys, Marge vs. the Monorail is the 12th episode of Season 4, and it first aired on January the 14th, 1993. It was directed by Rich Moore, and it was written by Conan O'Brien. I have said in the past that this one is possibly my favourite ever episode of The Simpsons of all time, so this one will be an interesting one to go over. It follows Marge discovering the horror of the monorail the town decided to fund after her Main Street idea gets shut down by the slick Lyle Landley, voiced by the late, great Phil Hartman. Like I said, this one will be an interesting one to unpack, so let's not waste too much time and get into the plot of this thing. The episode starts off with this Flintstones parody with Homer. It's fitting because The Simpsons has always been compared to the Flintstones, and it's obvious that the show got some, if not a lot, of inspiration to its predecessor. I do have to say though that this opener is a little random and unneeded. It doesn't serve the story in any way, and I think they could have used this time to bring us more monorail jokes. After this, we see Mr. Burns and Smithers sneaking some waste barrels into a park, but they soon get caught by the EPA. Mr. Burns is fined $3 million for this, and the town have a meeting to discuss what to do with the money. This is our inciting incident, of course. It sparks the events that causes the conflict, and Marge is the one who discovers the meeting in the newspaper. At the meeting, Marge suggests they fix Main Street, and at first the town are on board with this idea, although they think it was Grandpa who said it, but he arrives. Lyle Landley. Honestly, controversial opinion, but this is Hartman's second best character. I won't reveal who is number 1 and who is number 3, but even though Lyle only has this episode focused on him, he is so goddamn charismatic. Lyle pitches the monorail idea, and the town breaks out into song as they're all on board with this idea. The song is one of the best The Simpsons has done in my opinion. Sure, it takes away some of the realism, but it's quick, snappy, and such a good tune that I don't really care too much about it taking away from the realism. The town deciding this and Marge's idea being shut down is our plot point too, and steers us into the second act of the episode. Lyle talks to Lisa's class, and then Homer watches an advert on TV for the monorail conductor position, and goes to the class to receive the training. Bart tests him, and he seems proud that his father is going to be a monorail conductor. The final class commences, and Landley picks Homer, pretty randomly, to be said conductor. This serves as our midpoint, as it is the no-return point for both Homer and Marge. Marge notices the poor condition of the monorail and goes to visit Lyle Landley himself to ask questions. She finds his notebook containing drawings of his schemes. Now, this is slightly convenient, I guess, but I'm gonna give it a pass just because we saw previously that Lyle Landley seems to doodle a lot. It would have made more sense maybe if they had shown that he brought cheap parts or that he didn't have a proper construction license, but the drawings act as a way for the whole audience to know that this man is shady and bad. Marge has these really cheesy and outdated audio flashbacks of characters saying things they did earlier in the episode. I don't think it was entirely needed, maybe the North Haverbrook one, but the others were certainly unneeded. Marge anyway travels to North Haverbrook and sees it in its terrible state. She then meets Sebastian Cobb, who reveals he helped Landley cut corners and build the monorail cheap. I think this character could have been seen earlier, just so we get a better redemption arc for him, but overall I like his inclusion, and he serves as a really great ally for Marge in this tale, although I think it would have been better if Marge actually had to do something to recruit him. The premiere for the monorail begins, and Lisa sees Lyle leaving for his plane. Marge and Cobb rush back, but they arrive to the monorail too late, as it has already left the station with Homer and Bart. This serves as plot point 2, and it drives us into the third and final act. The train begins to go out of control and speeds around the track. Homer is unable to stop it either. Wiggum and Quimby have this funny side scene of them deciding who is in charge of this situation. I like this scene on its own, but looking over the entire episode, it certainly wasn't necessary for the plot. But it does act as a nice little C plot to break the tension of the monorail situation. Leonard Nimoy watches and comments on a solar eclipse, and the train, due to being solar powered, stops. This acts as a nice little bait and switch. If this was the ending and how they were all saved, then I would hate this scene, but I'm mixed on it overall, to be honest. It does, like I say, act as a cool bait and switch, but the convenience added with Nimoy, a celebrity cameo, makes the scene feel a little bit forced and weird. Lyle gets his comeuppance as he is swarmed by an angry North Haverbrookian mob. It's again convenient how they know he is on the plane and even know his seat number, but I don't know, this town probably has a grudge, so maybe it isn't unrealistic that they would keep tabs on him. Cobb suggests that Homer finds a way to anchor the train, and I kind of dislike this slightly. It makes Marge not very active in the climax. I think maybe they could have made Cobb a little incompetent, and thus Marge should have suggested the anchor solution instead. But it's no big deal. Homer finds a lasso and takes the M from the monorail to design a makeshift anchor. We get some nice jokes as the anchor runs through the town, but eventually it anchors the monorail to the big donut, and everyone is saved. Nimoy fades away. Again, I'm mixed on this joke. Doesn't affect the story much, but it's a little pandering and annoying. Finally, we see that everyone is okay and safe, and we get the popsicle stick tower joke, the 50-foot magnifying glass joke, and the escalator to nowhere joke to close off the episode. The structure of the plot, for the most part, is really solid. We have this escalation that builds up effectively to the third act and the climax. There are aspects I'm not 100% sold on, like anything to do with Leonard Nimoy, and I wish they made Marge come up with the anchor solution, as it's her episode. Not really much more to say about the plot itself. Like I said, a few nitpicks, but it is pretty damn good for the most part. So now we should probably talk about the jokes. Was this episode funny? Let's see. So of course, I think the humour in this episode is good. My favourite joke is of course this.
Hello, my name is Mr. Snrub, and I come from, someplace far away.
It's absurdist in many ways, and the over-the-top exit is hilarious too. I like the Nimroy Quimby "May the Force be with you" joke. It's simple, I know, but it's effective. Mono equals one, rail equals rail is a really good Lyle joke. The anchor moment had some really good visual jokes with the Siamese twins and the anchor store joke with the sea captain. I really like the ending too with the other pointless attractions that Springfield has. It's a nice joke to close off the episode with. The Lurleen callback with her being an alcoholic is just sort of sad, but I'd be lying if I didn't find it a tiny bit funny. I don't want to sit here listing off jokes after joke. I think it's fair to say this episode is full of great dialogue and visual humour. Apart from the Lurleen joke and also the Nimoy joke where he fades away, there really isn't any humour I hate or dislike in this episode. Just jokes I'm not a massive fan of. So, solid humour, solid plot. Will this episode have solid characters too? Let's see. As stated, I think the protagonist of this story is Marge Simpson. The plot beats for the most part follow her, well, apart from the climax. But you could make the argument she recruited Cobb as an ally, so maybe she was partly responsible for fixing the conflict. Maybe if Marge actually had to convince Cobb to help, I would make that argument, but Cobb did just kinda help for no real reason caused by Marge. We don't exactly get a new perspective on Marge or anything, but certainly this aligns with her character, so I wouldn't knock points off for her characterization. Homer is presented particularly well too in this episode. It does become a cliche of how many jobs Homer has over the series, but him being a monorail conductor makes sense. It's not a job that requires that much work and that much skill, but we know that Lyle Landley is a shady dude, so it makes sense that he would pick randomly who gets the job. Lyle himself is amazing. He is quirky, he's slick, he's a scumbag. It's a perfect mix of character elements to make a perfect villain. The song he sings is perfect too. I would have liked our characters to be involved in his downfall, but I kinda get why they didn't do it. At the end of the day, the main conflict was with the monorail not stopping. Anyway, not got much more to say really. We get some new stuff with Bart, Lisa, Mayor Quimby and Chief Wiggum, but nothing that crazily new. So let's move on to the score. As I said, I love this episode, but rewatching it with a critical eye, I can be honest and say that it's not perfect. I do think this episode is good, and I came into this review wanting to give this episode a 10 out of 10, but the pointless opening, the stuff with Nimoy, the fact that Marge isn't too involved with the climax solution, I can say that this isn't perfect. That being said, it is good. It has a well-paced plot, laugh-out-loud humour, and a really good characterisation for Marge and Homer, and the cherry on top is Phil Hartman's Lyle Landley. Anyway, I give Marge vs. the Monorail a solid 9 out of 10. Now let's move on to the number generator. Wait, what? So, Halloween is next week, so I figured why not we do a Treehouse of Horror. So no one actually suggested a Treehouse of Horror episode when I did the requests in the Discord. So I figured just for Halloween we'll do a Treehouse of Horror every year. So I'm restricting Treehouse of Horror episodes now. You guys can't suggest them anymore. But in return, every month, every year, every October, the closest Tuesday to Halloween, I will do a Treehouse of Horror one. So we've got 1 to 30. Let's see which Treehouse of Horror we'll be doing. The Treehouse of Horror 5. Whew. Don't worry, the wheel will return next week.